at 2 p.m. I'm Jane Rabel, Chair of the Lincoln City Council, and I have my colleagues Sandra Washington, Tammy Ward, and James Bowers on, as well as Teresa Meyer, our clerk of the city. And I wanted to let everyone know that today we are video conferencing via Zoom. And if you would like to follow us on this director's meeting, you can go to www.youtube.com/LNKTV City, or you can also join us on facebook.com/LNKTV City. And I just want to let everyone know that if anyone is participating on the public side, you would be in the Luxford studio, and we do have a copy of the Open Meetings Act posted there. And I have a copy of the Open Meetings Act right here with me. And I know my colleagues have their copies as well. And are there any adjustments to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I think we can turn it over to Teresa. Do you want to go over the agenda for today?
Sure, I sure can. I don't have anything except under public ordinances, second reading. I will call items 5C and D together, and 5E and F.
And Teresa, none of those items we are going to be voting on, correct?
Correct. This is just public hearing.
Just public hearing on those items. Okay, terrific.
I have a point on this on 5C and D.
Yes.
I spoke with the city attorney who drafted the lease. In my review of the document, I found some language errors, and
Okay.
I was expecting that we might see an addendum or a correction on this before 3 o'clock today. So I'm going to try and monitor my email at the same time to see if the corrections came through.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Teresa, you have not seen any corrections yet?
No, I have not.
You have not. Okay. So we will keep a lookout for that, and hopefully we will get them to us by 3 p.m. And then Teresa, I don't know if you have the capability, if they would certainly include you on this, because sometimes we should have a break between the director's meeting and the city council meeting that we can
Right.
go back and see if we've received them in our emails.
Yeah, and I'll check with Jeff.
Okay.
The attorney is Jocelyn.
Okay, very good.
Sounds good. So that's something in the agenda that we will look forward to. And now I see Jennifer Brinkman. Welcome, Jennifer, from the mayor's office.
Hello.
Hi, thank you for joining us.
Of course. Let's see, just a couple of updates from us. The mayor is continuing to do her daily briefings for the community, and I know has been in touch with, I think, every council member at this point to participate in areas of interest or expertise to EPU, and I think we should have had everyone participate, or at least had inquired if people wanted to participate by the end of this week. Today, she'll be talking about a new data dashboard that we're going to unveil on the COVID-19 website that's going to provide additional information about cases and testing and all those kinds of things that will be updated 3 times daily using a GIS format. So that will be the subject of today's briefing. I know I've talked to several of you about certain parts of city operations, and I tell you that we continue to monitor and evaluate parks usage. We are looking at some potential additional service changes, but we're reviewing some of that stuff with the health department so that we're operating under their guidance. So we may have some additional changes there, and are starting to evaluate summer operations and what that might look like this year. So we'll be in touch if there are any changes that we anticipate with regard to the parks. And finally, the mayor spent a good deal of the weekend lobbying our delegation in Congress regarding the next supplemental package that might be passed on the Hill. We were at times optimistic and then at times pessimistic about the likelihood that municipalities under $500,000 in population would receive direct aid. There was a spreadsheet floating around that anticipated, based on CDBG allocations in recent years, we might be entitled to about $19 million, which would be really helpful to us as we look at how to maintain service in the next budget year. Anticipating that we will see a decline in sales tax, particularly in March and April at this point. Latest is we're not very optimistic that that will be part of the next supplemental, but we will continue to communicate with the delegation about why we think that's important. So that's kind of what we've been working on. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Jennifer? Yes, Tammy.
So Jennifer, what's that congressional, having worked on AFR for so many years, what is their response to Lincoln and Omaha? How can they not, we don't have any cities large enough in Nebraska, so what's their response to us?
Yeah, I haven't probably had an in-depth conversation with the mayor, particularly about her direct contact. She did talk to Congressman Fortenberry and Senator Fisher last week, and then communicated, I think, over the weekend with Senator Sass. You know, my sense is that it unfortunately has come down to some partisan views about whether local government needs direct aid or not. I know in Omaha, we've been in quite close contact with Mayor Stothert. She and the mayor have been on the phone and exchanging text messages for the past couple of weeks. And I think it's, at this point, I really have no idea other than to say that some groups of people on the Hill appear to believe that we don't need direct aid at the city level and at local government level, and that we should weather the storm and adjust our service levels accordingly. So we're trying to impress upon them why we don't think that that is the right move.
Yeah, I don't doubt that at all. It gives me a lot of pause to hear that. So I'd heard it before today, but.
We have, but I should acknowledge that we have seen letters from both Senator Fisher and Congressman Bacon, actually, to some of the leaders on both the House and the Senate, mentioning the need and the revenue declines that local government anticipates because of COVID-19. So there is some of that conversation happening, but a lot of the information that we're getting and monitoring is coming through the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the National League of Cities. I think they're really trying to impress upon people on the Hill about why this is important to us.
We are not the only state who has cities of our size that would be ignored or left wanting. I mean, a lot of states in the Middle West look a lot like Nebraska.
And Jennifer,
Yes.
Jennifer, there was a recent report, and I forget the journal that it was in, but it listed Lincoln in the top 20 cities in the United States that would be impacted by what is going on, the pandemic, and have more impact than some of the other cities of our size as well, just because of our reliance on somehow, property taxes, but also sales tax in particular. And I don't know if you have had a chance to see that article. I know I have it in my briefcase somewhere, and I can send it to you.
I haven't seen anything that labeled us in the top 20, but I think it's an acknowledgement that our general fund is made up 47% by sales taxes. So if we see a significant drop in sales taxes, then we're going to see a significant impact on our general fund.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question for Jennifer? I have one. I'll go ahead and ask it. Jennifer, I know last week there was a press release that went out talking about the different public counters that have been closed. Could you talk a little bit about that? And has there been any pushback? Because there are other ways for the public to reach out to these different entities that have closed their public counters.
Yeah, I think we are trying to acknowledge and balance the ability of the city to continue to do business At the same time, acknowledging that, we have promoted and support this 21-day stretch endorsed by the governor that matches up with, the majority of the directed health measure timeframe that was issued by our health department. So every department that has closed to walk-in traffic has another option for the public to continue to do business. So if that's, in most cases, that is by appointment only. So if people still they don't have the ability to complete their business electronically for some reason, they can still call all of those departments and then make an appointment so that there can be strict social distancing accomplished, depending on how many people need to be there. So that's kind of how we are operating those places at the moment.
So the general public should probably look at that department, go on that department's website and see if they can find that phone number and make an appointment if they want to come in person still, but they have to make an appointment for some of those counters.
Yeah, and the COVID-19 website that we've operated has all of those changes listed there, and the phone numbers are right there. So they shouldn't have to search for the department that they're looking for. It should be right there, and they'll know exactly how those changes have been implemented.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions for Jennifer? Thank you, Jennifer. And we would go on to Interim Health Director Pat Lopez, but I don't see her popping up in the screen.
I think when we talked earlier, Jane, the email had said around 2:15, and that's what I had reiterated to her a few minutes ago. She might just be a couple minutes.
Okay, that would be great. David, we could just pop down to some of the planning department questions that people might have on agenda item 4A and 4B. Did you want to take on some of those questions and until we get Pat on board?
Sure, and then I would just say that once Pat's on, certainly just cut me off and let Pat give the update, and then I can come back as needed. I'll start by saying that I just sent an email to all of you so that you have the details of the information that was requested, as well as what we've worked on over the last day or so now, to make sure you have the information you need to make a decision on the items that are on the agenda today. I think to summarize really, and then see what questions you might have, really what we have on the agenda today are two annexation agreements that have been in the works for a long time. And there's a kind of a general question about, have these items gone through the advisory committee on transportation or not? And the answer to that is yes. That the list of projects that the council has already approved, and the two that are on the agenda for today, and there's one pending, which is the 8801 Holdridge project. Those projects are all on the list that went through the act. It's all that information is available on the LTU website for the act information. And so we are processing forward or already have processed 5 other agreements for projects that are on that list through the city council. So we are following what that information already has informed us to do. That's the story there, is that obviously we are in extraordinary times and we have impacts on our revenues. And so what we have done recently is assess kind of the entire list. There are about a dozen other projects that are also on that list that we are pausing on. We are not going to bring those forward in future agreements until we have a better feel for what the economic situation will have an impact on our revenues. The reason why we feel comfortable on the 8 that are either already approved or including the 2 that are on the agenda today is that the projection for the Lincoln on the Move quarter-cent sales tax per year was 3.25 million. And so what for the first 2 years of the revenue for Lincoln on the Move, that would dip into for these projects. So we're going to be funding these projects, the 8, over several years, not just the first 2 years. What the first 2 years are calling for is I gotta make sure I get it right, 2.1 million and 1.6 million for this current budget year and then next year's budget year. So that is significantly below the 3.25 that it was before the economic downturn was anticipated. And so when you call into question up to 40 or 50% of the sales tax revenues, we still feel very confident, LTU does as well, that we'll be able to fund the 2.1 million and the 1.6 million to keep these projects moving forward. And again, not all of the funding for Lincoln on the Move is in these first 2 years for these projects. The agreements are stating this additional years of revenue in the future. And also, we are not moving forward on the projects that are also on that list that went through the ACT committee that haven't come before you yet. So there are several other projects that hopefully we can get those to you sooner than later, but they might have to be delayed for 6 months or to next year or something, just until we really understand the breadth of the impact on the revenue stream. But we feel confident that those projects on your agenda today, in addition to the other 6 that have already come before you, can be funded. And it's a responsible way to keep things moving, but not overreaching on what we think we can get done.
Thank you. And David, just for clarification, these are only amendments, correct? These are amendments to projects that are already in the works that we've already approved. Is that right?
Yeah, the agreements themselves have already been worked on. And most of these are because more revenue came forward with the Lincoln on the Move quarter-cent sales tax revenue. And we're trying to basically get the projects that are related to all these existing agreements move forward faster, which is a big piece of the strategy here for Lincoln on the Move. So we're really amending already agreed to annexation agreements or those that have already been worked on a lot. And of the 8 that we're talking about, those are selected to really stay on track and to move forward because they really were the ones that were ready to go. There are other ones that are almost there, but we're just simply not going to move those forward. So these are ones that have really been solidified and are ready to go. They have the financing to move forward with the projects. And actually the financing part is an important piece of this. So the way that these agreements are set up is that either through directed impact fees, which we've been doing that for many years now, and or use of the Lincoln on the Move quarter-cent sales tax revenues as they come in. Most of these have the developer fronting the money to get the project going now. And then we will be reimbursing them as time goes on. And so there is a risk that's being taken on, more risk than usual, I would say, of the developer groups that are part of these agreements. So it's kind of a shared agreement here for these.
David, I have Madam Chair, if you don't mind. David, I have a question for you. I really appreciate hearing that you've taken into consideration the reduced revenues coming into the city and that these projects are still set to go. You said there were 8 projects, and I know we have one that is not yet on our agenda. You said we've already approved 5. We have 2 today. The one that's not on our agenda, the 88th and Holdridge, do you see a problem with that one moving forward if it doesn't come back to our agenda for, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks?
No, I don't think we have any indication that they're not going to move forward with their project. I mean, I know that there's still ongoing, I believe, constructive conversations to get an agreement to allow that to come off of pending. But I have not heard that there's any real concern that it's not going to happen. So I think that once it is ready to move forward, I think we do want to get it back on your agenda and take action on it. But I don't think it's risking viability right now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And everyone, I see that we have interim Pat Lopez on with us. And we want to say welcome. And Pat, if you're ready, we will go ahead and get your updates.
Okay, well, over the weekend, we had 21 new cases reported. And 6 of those cases are related to a household with positive cases. Then we've had another group that we're exploring and working through still this afternoon, kind of going through the contact tracing. But we also have another individual who's in the hospital on a ventilator. And then we have, that's one in one hospital, and then we have another 3 in a different hospital as well that are hospitalized. But of the 21, they're across the age continuum to the 20s to the 80s. And we did anticipate that we would have additional positives when we had more testing available. I think we talked about that last week. So in a lot of ways, this isn't a surprise that we should have more members, and we keep looking for our any connections with them, but they're all, it's just because we have enough community spread that people were seeing this. We still have the one death in Lincoln. And since I talked to you last week, we've been able to secure more testing for our both Bryan and St. E's drive-in from the public health lab. St. E's has modified their registration process on the web to be identical to Bryan's. Both of the sites, both of the health systems have worked with us when we've had maybe a group of people that we want to get in and get them screened for a particular reason. They've been extremely helpful to us. I also wanted to let you know we're monitoring 61 people, and those would be close contacts of people possibly that were infected or traveled. And we have 15 pending cases at the public health lab. That seems to be turning around. Our number of positive cases in Nebraska has overnight increased by 133. And we've had 29 deaths now. And we're still not at the rate of testing we would like to be at. But I want to point out to you that Hall County now has 468 cases, probably more than that now. Douglas County is at 288. Hall County is, we're still waiting for the more confirmation of their cases. But Hall County, Hastings, and Lexington. Lexington is probably a bigger spot right now with what's going on with the meatpacking plant there. And I'm not sharing anything that isn't already in the news, but Madison, the Tyson plant there already has cases. The National Guard will be going there to do some testing. They're already helping out in Lexington and Hall County with the testing there. I'm trying to do that mapping. The other area that's being impacted is up in Dakota County. There's a meatpacking plant there, and I think they probably have over 3,000 employees. So just thinking about the magnitude of people that are involved in those situations. We've been working, have contacted almost all our larger businesses, and we're collecting information, asking if there's anything they need from us, asking about what their plans are, how they're doing social distancing, if they're using face cloths, if there's other things that they need to know about to maintain that safety for employees there, and any other guidance that we can provide them. So we're almost working through that list now. And then we're talking with the Restaurant Association and other restaurant owners here. And we've started our discussions with the farmers market folks too. I think I'll stop there and see what questions you have for me.
Are there any questions for Pat? Just go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, Tammy.
Pat, could you elaborate a little bit about your discussions with the Nebraska Restaurant Association? Are you talking about if and when we slowly reopen, or what are?
Yeah, slowly reopen. And then the other piece about that was, I think you may have heard the governor made an announcement about allowing them to sell kind of like a pop-up store. Yes. So both of those things. But just talking to them about what it would look like, also in the same discussion about reopening and how that might happen safely, and when more about how it could happen safely.
Okay, James?
Hey, Pat, can you talk a little bit more about the National Guard testing? Like, what does that look like when the National Guard goes in to help test? And is there any kind of like benchmark that is met for that to happen?
Well, the National Guard testing looks like Bryan drive-through and St. East drive-through. It's exactly the same thing. And in fact, we do probably more testing in our drive-throughs. And so that's one of the reasons they're giving us tests to do here. They do about 50 tests at a time, James, when they come in. And so in those other areas, they've tried to go around the state where there hasn't been much testing at all. That's where they've been going. Now they're redirecting to those hotspots like Grand Island where they're overwhelmed, and then Lexington. And I think they'll be up in Dakota County, I'm pretty sure, and also in Madison.
Thank you.
Because of the outbreaks.
Pat, I have a question. Are we seeing any patients sent to Lincoln and Lancaster County for treatment in our hospitals?
We are seeing, St. Elizabeth CHI has an agreement with the state. So yes, they are transferring patients in here from other areas to that section of St. Elizabeth's. But we monitor daily what's happening and have ongoing conversations with them and the chief medical officer at the state to assure that we have beds for our people in Lincoln and Lancaster County.
Are there any other questions for Pat?
Pat, I have a question.
Okay, Sandra?
I've been monitoring what the activity in our parks, and I'm glad to see that people are out in the parks getting some, mental solace. But I was concerned that there was a lot of playground activity. And I am curious if you have seen, if you're tracking, if you're tracking park activity when you're doing your research, you're tracking cases, whether or not you're also tracking whether or not people have been in parks.
Yes, we do ask them that and where they've been. And the other thing that we keep monitoring, Sandra, is the calls in for the C-Click fix. We have fairly robust people let us know if things are happening. So we're trying to monitor that. And I do believe they're going to try to put up some barriers, and I'm speaking out of turn here, but Lynn Johnson would be the better one to answer that, some barriers to keep people from getting on the playground equipment.
Yes, I've been working with the staff at the Parks Department, both before Lynn had something call him away, but they have prioritized first the regional parks, and then they've gone to all the neighborhood parks in every quadrant of the city at the same time to take down the swings and then to wrap the playground equipment in snow fencing or construction fence, whatever is best suited for that playground. And I've had a couple of people ask me over the weekend about school playgrounds. And I know that LPS did not choose to fence off playgrounds. If they had a fence that could be locked, they did, but many of the school playgrounds don't. And I know I shouldn't probably get into their business. We're City of Lincoln, not the school district, but I have some concern that playgrounds are still being used at schools.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I think that's something we can check into a little bit. I monitor.
I did not witness, but I will tell you that a neighbor of mine was at a local elementary school walking the exterior for exercise and noticed a family lifting their small children over the fence and into the locked playground.
Oh my.
I chose not to do a click it on that one. Since I wasn't the witness, but I was like, ay.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Well, I try to monitor. I look out my window every so often in the park and see what's happening. Once in a while, I try to go out there and actually walk for a few minutes to clear my head, so.
Good idea.
That's good. And I can tell you that I've been using the trails and I can see that people are practicing safe distancing and really making sure to keep good physical distance between each other. And sometimes they'll go off the trail to make sure that happens for themselves or their kids. I think that's something that people are really embracing and using for maybe even the very first time. They're using our trails as a source of recreation and exercise. And personally, I'm happy to see that, but I want to make sure everybody practices safe physical distancing. Thank you so much, Pat. Are there any other questions for Pat? Thank you, Pat. I want to let you know that I know our company put in a request for additional hand sanitizers. We got a lot in, and forgive me, but I know that we are really directing it to stores that are in Hall County and Adams County, just to make sure that we keep those people safe, because we can see that they have the greatest need right now. So,
That's
but I know
good.
that's been a really, really helpful for even us who have a hard time getting our hands on hand sanitizers for everyone and our customers too. So thank you very much for that.
That's good.
Hey, Pat, we need you to stay well. That's for sure.
I'm doing, you too. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Pat.
Bye-bye.
Bye. We can continue to ask questions of David Carey when we go into the city council meeting. I know that we wanted to try to tackle some of the boards and committees and commission reports that we keep pushing back. And Tammy, I don't know if you're prepared to talk about DLA, because I think, didn't you say you just had a meeting via Zoom today?
Well, we did. It was a special meeting today. The mayor actually spoke to whoever could attend from the DLA board, but we did not meet in March. But we do have fragmented board meetings coming up starting tomorrow over next week for the DLA board that Todd Ogden has put together. But we did, yes, just get off a 1 o'clock Zoom meeting with the mayor for those who could attend. So that's really, we have not met since the pandemic, but we will have a report next month.
Okay. And then you said you're like segregating certain topics, or how?
So what Todd Ogden did was have DLA's board members sign up for 3 different times.
Oh, okay.
You can meet. So he just divided us into 3 different categories for what worked with your schedule.
Okay, I see.
And then he'll collaborate with all the things that have happened. So we should have a report next month.
So we'll hear more details in May.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Any questions for Tammy? Okay, then let's go on to problem resolution committee task force.
Yeah,
James
the
Michael.
PRT is now meeting virtually to review updates on properties. One property was removed from the list and one was added on. That's the biggest update from last month's PRT meeting.
James, is that like the normal count, just to have one on and one go off? Or is it just the time of year, or?
No, in my experience, it kind of varies. Sometimes we'll be talking about the same amount of properties for an extended period of time. Sometimes some will get added on, sometimes some will get taken off. So the fact that one went on and one came on, just matter of chance.
Okay. All right, any questions for James? All right, the next committee is Safe and Successful Kids, the interlocal agreement. Benny Shobe and Richard McGidness have chosen not to participate via Zoom, so we will hold that meeting and discussion of the meeting that took place over to our May meeting. The next one is the Public Building Commission meeting. I did attend on the March meeting, and then they just met on this past Tuesday on April 14th, and I was not able to join them on the meeting. But I can tell you that progress continues on certainly the new entryway to the Hall of Justice for the courts and the county attorney's offices. And it seems to be on track, on schedule, and on budget, which is always good to hear for that. And I think people are saying that they do appreciate some of the logistical changes that have already been made, and saying that it seems like they can move people into the Hall of Justice quicker. And I think the guards that are monitoring that feel much more comfortable with the current setup. I know that the other small remodel projects with the sheriff's office and the register and assessor of deeds are moving forward as well, with really no other delays or issues that have been brought up. So happy to take any questions on Public Building Commission, but I think it's been really smooth sailing so far. So knock on wood. Okay. No questions. We'll move on to the Board of Health. James Michael, that's you.
So the Board of Health, we tried to figure out a way to make sure that we were being a good example, being the Board of Health in the middle of a pandemic. And so we did not want to meet in person when that was not what we as the health department were recommending people do. The Board of Health meeting did not have any action items on its agenda. So what we did is, instead of holding a Board of Health meeting, we met in small groups without quorum in order to provide Board of Health members an update of the current pandemic situation that's going on, and to make sure to loop them in and keep them up to date. So there wasn't any action items to begin with for this month. And so in an abundance of caution, in order to be safe and in order to keep our community safe and to be a good example, the Board of Health did not meet in person, and instead had smaller group meetings over technology.
So the Board of Health was able to participate using Zoom?
Not as an official board. We met without quorum.
Oh, you went, okay.
Because since it's a city-county agency, it just seemed like the easier, most appropriate route to go in that moment.
Okay, that sounds good. Are there any questions for James? Okay. Are there any other, I guess, business items that we should be discussing today? Oh yeah, Sandra.
It's
I
not
see your hand.
a business item, but I did meet with the New Americans Task Force on Friday. And they discussed really a number of things that are happening at the local level to continue to help new immigrants and refugees. We're still getting people coming into Lincoln during this time, and it sounds really actually amazing. It was a feel-good story all around because people were telling very creative ways they are continuing to help our newest residents, and really probably our most vulnerable residents here in Lincoln and Lancaster County. Get food, continue to take English lessons, though the face-to-face English lessons have all been postponed. There is still some tutoring happening one-to-one and some online classes. So that's wonderful.
I think that's great. Sandra, do you think it would be helpful if maybe we had a representative come from the food bank or from the Center for People in Need to give us kind of an update, or would it be Barb Bartles, about what is going on with the nonprofit community? What are their greatest needs? How are they struggling to keep up with the demand for food in our community?
Yes. I think that would be a wonderful idea. I mean, the COVID-19 Community Philanthropy Fund is doing good work, but I think having someone talk directly with us about food need, that still seems to be a great concern. The food bank, it seems overwhelmed. No, they're not overwhelmed like they're not productive. They seem overwhelmed with the amount of need that has increased. And for everyone's safety, they're not taking volunteers. So they're really working with the volunteers that they've had for a long period of time and other action groups, community action groups, to get food out. But it is harder to do this. But I think if we could get someone from the food bank or Center for the People in Need, that would be a wonderful thing, because I think that there are still some needs that are not being met or not being completely met. And it would, I think, help to have a little bit more light for everyone to see.
Because I know we see in the paper that they do talk about Lincoln Public Schools adding more schools
Yep.
for families to do breakfast and lunch pickups at those schools. And so we are hearing from them that they're making more meals available for children. So it'd be good to hear what are the needs of those other communities. I'll try to work on getting someone to come next week to our directors meeting and just give us a brief update, if that's okay with everyone. Okay.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So any other items? Any hands up? Okay, then I'd like to say we are adjourned and we will reconvene at 3 p.m. for our city council meeting. So see everybody then.
Are Richard and Benny gonna be in the chambers?
No, Richard and Benny and Roy will not be participating today.
So will they be in the chambers or will they be?
They